Hi, Adam.
Nicole.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Municipal Administration Center. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine to order at 5 o'clock on June 19th, 2023. Roll call, Deputy Mayor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Blackwell.
Present.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Present.
Councillor Kennedy.
Present.
Councillor Prenger. Councillor Steinhoff Gray.
Present.
Councillor Stewart. I'd like to also acknowledge the staff members we have in person and online. And we also have some staff supporting us electronically this evening. And welcome to the folks in our audience tonight as well. Call on Deputy Mayor Clark for the land acknowledgement.
We'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation, the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation, whose ancestors were the first to inhabit, care for, and live on this land. We recognize and deeply appreciate the contributions that Indigenous peoples have made, both in caring for this land and shaping and strengthening this community, our province, and our country. As a public service organization, we are dedicated to learning and acknowledging Indigenous history and culture, and are committed to actions that move us towards a journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Saugeen Métis.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there any amendments, additions, or deletions to the agenda that council members would like to propose? And disclosure of pecuniary interest, if you have interest now or as it raises during the meeting, please let us know. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. I'd like to declare an indirect pecuniary interest in 7.1B of Committee of the Whole. So I will declare again within Committee of the Whole.
Were there any registrants for the public forum? No. So it's the adoption of minutes from regular and special meetings of council. Clerk, please.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Beth Blackwell, that the minutes of the council meetings held on May 29th, 2023, special meeting, June 5th, 2023, and June 12th, 2023, both public and council meeting be adopted as printed.
Heard the motion, any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. So we have are there any notice of motions? And we have some motions to be passed at this time. 7.2, clerk, please.
Moved by Doug Kennedy, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that council recommend that Bruce County Council approve the condominium application S 2022-13 in accordance with the draft plan and conditions.
This was a document that was presented last week, and it's come back for approval. And we have online with us our planning expert, Jack Van Dorp from county. And Jack, would you like to speak to this just to fill in some of the gaps? And from a personal perspective, I missed the ball totally on this one last week. It's come back as I let us get distracted, and it was not good. So Jack is here just to remind us what the proposal is all about. Mr. Van Dorp, please.
Certainly, thank you, Mayor Craig and Council. So what we have is an application for a condominium. The particular type of condominium here is called a vacant lot condominium. And so this is where the subject lands would be divided into various units, and then these units could be sold, registered and then sold. But it's not necessary for the buildings on them to be constructed before they're sold. It's one of the multiple ways of proceeding with a condominium in Ontario. Other types include like a standard condominium where everything is developed and then it's registered. Sometimes that happens all at once or in phases. What we've often done in Kincardine has been a what's called an exemption process, again, where they build it and then we exempt them from the process that has a public meeting because it's just a land tenure question. In this case, because nothing has yet been built, the proposal is to go through this approval process where they would have an approval with conditions. They meet the conditions, they can register the condominium, and then whether or not they've built or not built, they can sell units as these vacant land units. So what we're dealing with at this step in the process is the proposal to establish the conditions for the condominium approval. So this is really an ownership arrangement for a proposed development that could proceed independently of setting up individual ownership opportunities for the property. So I wanted to kind of highlight those points. So when we're dealing with this, the things we're looking for in the conditions are really focused on the things that we need to set up in order to be able to establish the details of this as a condominium where there's different owners within the subject lands. The details around the fine tuning of the road size and emergency access and snow storage and all the other elements that are really fine grained on the site plan are all addressed through the site plan process. So we've taken those, we haven't applied those conditions to this set of conditions because we have another process to be able to address all those details. And so that's where you see it's a relatively short list of conditions for the proponents to meet. So the staff recommendation would be that Kincardine Council endorse this approval, and then it would come to the county as the approval authority for land division, and we would move forward the draft approval with those conditions, and then the proponent would move to meet those conditions. I realize my video is frozen. I'm going to pause, make sure my audio is maybe still working.
Yes, the audio is still
Okay.
fine. Jack,
Okay.
thank you.
And maybe we're back in. So that's the some of the high points. As a land division application, council is asked to make a decision, and then flowing from that decision, so your council is asked to endorse it. We would then make a decision to give it a conditional approval. And then there are rights of appeal for the municipality, First Nations, and limited other agencies or utility companies. The province has removed the third party right of appeal. So members of the public broadly would not have an appeal right in respect to this application. And were it to not be approved, the proponent could appeal that decision to not approve it. And the proponent could also appeal conditions if they disagreed with the setup of what they're expected to do before they can get a final approval. So that's kind of some highlights of kind of where we are, what we're looking to achieve in terms of, or what the staff recommendation is tonight, and where it's going. I'm happy to take any questions council may have.
So this proposal was discussed at length last week with issues that had already been resolved. Previous council had approved it. It had been appealed. The Ontario Land Tribunal dismissed the appeal. So the traffic study was waived by the previous council. The stormwater is fine. The roads are fine. Everything's fine. The only question we're dealing with is this particular type of ownership. That's all. That's the only question tonight. And unless there's any significant planning issues, then there's not really a big reason to not endorse it from my perspective, but that's why Jack is here to answer questions. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you through you, Mayor. It's a clarifying question, and I'm not sure I remember that the conditions of draft approval were actually in the public meetings agenda. I just want to clarify that item 3 on the reserves, that a 0.3 meter reserve be conveyed, that's accurate, 0.3 meters.
Yes, certainly. And so these are often used. So it's historically known as a 1 foot reserve.
Okay.
The traditional method for this is to interrupt the ownership so that there's no directly abutting lands between the subject lands and Gingras Street that someone could then say, oh, I can, put my driveway, for example, from unit 19 out to Gingras Street. So that's where these reserves are commonly used. They create an interruption or an inability to say I have adjacent land.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
I just have one question. So I'm assuming that they won't be built until they've been purchased, but is there a time limit if certain folks have purchased these condominiums within which they have to start breaking ground? Or are they going to be held to a purchase waiting for other purchasers?
Thank you. And through the mayor, this project is a townhouse project. So I would expect that there would be some coordination on the part of the developer to, maybe they would line up the sales of 4 units, or if they have 3 sold, they would build 4 and intend to sell the 4th. But that would be something that would be for individual purchasers to confirm in their purchase and sale agreements with the vendor.
A well-intentioned question, because we are frequently frustrated with lands that are ready to be developed on and just sits and waits, but we don't really have any leverage to force that time frame upon them, do we, Mr. Van Dorp?
It is difficult to find that leverage.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions regarding this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much for clarifying that, Jack. We do appreciate your input.
My pleasure. Thank you.
8.1 is consideration of bylaws. The Durham Street establishes a public highway bylaw. Clerk, please.
Moved by Rory Kavanagh, seconded by Andrea Clark, that the Durham Street established as a public highway bylaw, Part 3 on Plan R 3R 7894 be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-104.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. Budget amendment bylaw. Clerk, please.
That the 2023 Budget Amendment 1 bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2023-105.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. Transfer property to Bruce Telecom amendment bylaw.
This is moved by Doug Kennedy, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that the Bruce Telecom Transfer Amendment 1 bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-106.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Oh, yes, Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you through you, Mayor. I understand this was like a late addition to the agenda today. I don't have a necessary problem. Can I get a quick brief on, it looks like transferring one particular property back to Kincardine, if somebody could just brief us on what that was.
I'd be glad to. You remember previously we had transferred all those properties and there was one that was done incorrectly. One too many. So it had to be transferred back again into municipal ownership rather than Bruce Telecom. There was no cash value, there was no value to it either to Bruce Telecom or to ourselves. So it just basically got oopsied and came back into our ownership. All in favor of the motion? That's carried. Move into committee of the whole. Clerk, please.
Moved by Rory Kavanagh, seconded by Andrea Clark, that council move into committee of the whole and upon completion return to council.
All in favor? It's carried. So I'd like to call to order the committee of the whole meeting of the corporation of the municipality at 5:14 PM. Roll call remains the same. Once again, are there any amendments or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, I ask for a disclosure of pecuniary interest. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I need to declare an indirect pecuniary interest in 7.1B due to being employed by a charitable nonprofit group.
So we have the adoption of minutes of the committee of the whole meeting. Clerk, please.
Moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by Mike Hinchberger, that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on June 12th, 2023 be adopted as printed.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Items for discussion from the council meeting. There's none. So we have some delegations this evening. Like to welcome Sharon Wood to come to the podium, please. Sharon is the chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and she leads a valuable team in our municipality. So welcome, Sharon. Timer is going to be up on the screen there. 10 minutes is the time allotted for delegations, plus any questions that may come at the end. So so thank you for being here.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for having us this evening. I'd like to start by sharing the names of those that sit on the Municipality of Kincardine Accessible Advisory Committee. My name is Sharon Woods. I'm the chair of the committee. Others that are here with us, Deputy Mayor Andrea Clark, Scott McPherson, who's vacant tonight, Josh Easton, Craig Rumi, Bruce Edwards, Miranda Graham, and Tracy Guy is our staff resource. Our meetings are held once a month unless a special meeting is required. So the purpose of our delegation this evening is one, to update council on the committee, inform council of the accessible legislation, discuss a bit of our previous committee highlights, and present the AAC accessibility top 3 priorities. So the applicable legislation, it's noted in your agenda. For your reference, I won't go through all that. So we'll move on to the next one. So as this is a newly appointed committee, I'd like to provide council with some of the accomplishments made by our previous committee in 2022. We provided input on the design of the Queen Street and the Big Dig. I want to thank Bruce Edwards, who was the committee's representative on this. Thanks, Bruce. We advocated with the Kincardine BIA and the Business IDA breakfast meeting to increase accessibility awareness in local businesses. We worked with the Kincardine District Secondary School to complete additional stop ramps for local businesses. Worked with our strategic initiatives group to promote the Ring the Bell initiative to provide doorbells to businesses in aid in accessibility. This initiative has raised awareness to accessibility in the downtown, and other municipalities are inquiring about the program also. We advocate for increased mobility transportation through SMART and want to thank council for supporting this resolution. And we also prepared an accessibility survey to hear from the public on their accessibility concerns. So there's the Hog's Breath that has the stopgap and the Ring the Bell. So in 2022, the Accessibility Advisory Committee, along with the Municipality of Kincardine, conducted a survey to get the public's input into what they would like to see for accessibility. The survey had 60 participants. We received good constructive comments. Some of the highlights of the survey resulted in the following priorities. They'd like to see more fully accessible playgrounds, an elevator at the Davidson Center. The office at the Davidson Center is not accessible due to the existing ramp at the Davidson Center being too steep. They'd like to see accessible walkways at the beach and benches versus Adirondack chairs in the downtown core. The current chairs are too hard for people to get out of. The print on the tax bills are too small. And a request for a crosswalk at Durham Market North and Princess Street to the church. During our last ACC meeting, our committee discussed in great length three top priorities, which we'd like to bring forward to council. Priority number one is receive council's endorsement to use the 2021 City of London FADs. In the early 2000s, the City of London developed FADs to assist with making facilities in London accessible. The FADs addressed accessibility for the design and construction of new facilities, as well as for retrofits and renovations of municipal facilities. This document was updated in 2007 and more recently in 2021. So in 2005, council passed a motion to adopt the use of the London FADs as amended from time to time as a guide as part of the 2005-2006 Municipality of Kincardine Accessibility Plan. So our proposed motion to council is that the FAD standards document, which has increased significantly since it was authorized to use as a guide by council by the 2005 resolution. The AAC fully endorses this new version of the document for use for the Municipality of Kincardine facilities and requests council pass the following motion. That the Accessibility Advisory Committee receives council's commitment to use the London Facility Design Standards, known as FADs, as the municipal standard to achieve accessibility and inclusion in municipal-owned buildings throughout the municipality of Kincardine. And whereas council can opt not to due to the financial burden that it would put on the municipality. Our priority number two, was receive support to work towards accessibility at the Davidson Center. As a second priority, the committee would like to see council support in making the Davidson Center accessible. The Davidson Center is a widely used facility by the community. Everyone at any age with varying abilities uses the facility. Facility rentals include sporting events for all ages, meeting rooms, arena, and the pool. Many clients that rent the facilities in the Davidson Center include community living and local seniors groups. As the newly appointed committee, it is priority the council work towards making the Davidson Center accessible. Due to the size and scope of the Davidson Center, the Accessibility Advisory Committee would not be able to identify all the barriers in the building or recommend solutions. To accomplish this, it is recommended that the accessibility audit be completed for the entire Davidson Center. This document will identify barriers, and we can develop a plan for the removal of those barriers, which will assist municipal staff in creating their future budgets and future work plans. It is recommended the accessible audit report be completed as soon as practicable. But if it's not able to be completed in a timely manner, we'd like to bring forward the committee priorities for the Davidson Center as follows. The Penetango Room, formerly known as the Old Seniors Room, which includes a newly installed kitchen. The kitchen is not accessible whatsoever. And we'd also like to see an accessible washroom up there. The main ramp going to the offices and the meeting room is too steep. And as you can see, the ramp that leads to the stairs, oh, that's the kitchen, that leads to the stairs at the office is not accessible either. We'd also like to see the replacement of the accessible pool ramp has been inaccessible since December of 2022. So I'm not sure if we have an update on that. And our priority number 3 was our catalog of issues. As a requirement in the AODA, the previous committee updated the multi-year accessibility plan and the catalog of issues, which was passed by council in January 2023. Staff worked with the Accessibility Advisory Committee to develop the plan, and the committee highlighted accessibility concerns in the other municipality and the other municipal facilities, which are noted in the catalog of issues. The Accessibility Advisory Committee would like staff and council to have the catalog of issues on their radar when preparing budgets and developing plans for municipal facilities, and work towards removing some of the identified barriers noted in this catalog of issues. So in conclusion, the Municipality of Kincardine Accessibility Advisory Committee is the voice of accessibility and continues to advocate for those that cannot. Our goal is to do whatever we can to make this municipality barrier-free and inclusive for all to enjoy. Thank you.
Sharon, thank you very much. We appreciate the work that you and the Accessibility Advisory Committee do for our municipality. And I'd like to offer this opportunity for any council members to comment or question. Deputy Mayor?
Thanks, Sharon, for the presentation. No, I think it's fine. Thank you. You spoke about the differences between the 2007, the 2021 fads. In your opinion, Sharon, is it a significant difference between the two fads that are presented?
Do you want to speak on that? Okay, I'll let Tracy speak on that.
There was actually a document in 2005 that preceded the 2007, and I was not able to get my hands on it to know the exact difference. I think the concepts are the same. They just developed more ideas, more turning radiuses, and just some more suggestions to make buildings accessible. It has doubled in size, though, for sure.
Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yeah, through the chair, just to maybe Jane can help us here, the ramp issue that we've had. Is there a timeline on it? Just please, thanks.
The ramp for the pool was actually delivered at the end of last week, and pool is shut down next week for some maintenance issues involving the pump, and we'll be installing it at the same time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through your mayor. This might be like a procedural question, but the resolution passed in 2005 made reference and used the word as amended from time to time. So I'm wondering right now why by default we haven't, barring making a change, we haven't already endorsed the current version of the fads. So.
Through the clerk. Yep.
So we are currently using the current version. However, we would like council to have a look at the current version. It is, as stated, it's about twice the size. And so just so that council is aware, the other amendments that they've done over the years really hasn't changed the size or the bulk of it. They were minor changes. This was a major change to that document.
Tracy. Yep.
The original motion also suggested that we use the fads as a guide, and where our new resolution is recommending we use it as a municipal standard.
So council will not be putting forward any motions following delegations like this, but certainly I will have a conversation with our staff and see what the timeline is to like properly address the Accessibility Advisory Committee's recommendations. We will have a fulsome discussion about that at a committee of the whole meeting as we're able. Like there's, I'm sure you've got us booked up pretty solid for a while, but you are certainly, as we commented, an important part of our community, and between yourself and Tracy, we will not be allowed to forget the impending discussion.
We won't
Anyway.
let you forget.
No, thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you.
All right, now I'd like to welcome Francesca Dobbin to the podium, please. Francesca is the Executive Director of United Way Grey Bruce, and we welcome you tonight for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to update everybody on the United Way. We're the United Way Bruce Grey. We cover all of Bruce and Grey counties, so we're here. This is actually where I grew up as well, and my mom still lives here, so I have to go visit her afterwards. So I'm not going to read everything on the slide, but generally the mission statement of our United Way is to meet the unmet needs in our county through the use of volunteers and financial resources. We're 100% fundraised. We're not a transfer payment agency with the government. We wake up every day going, okay, got to find the money to do the things that need to be done in our community. So this was our year ending in 2022. We had a $60,000 deficit coming out of the pandemic with all the needs associated with that. But fortunately, some minor surpluses before enable us to stay in a positive. This is our community investment area. So you can see that our utility assistance program is the most significant financial investment that we make in our community. Through our other programs, administration, we still have some pandemic funding coming through. We make grants out into the community. Our SOS outreach homelessness project is fairly new, of course, backpacks, and we'll get to that. We also have a financial literacy program. So we work with people who are struggling with poverty. You can't budget your way out of poverty. So it's not a, hey, let's just teach you how to budget to live on $700. It's a, you know, let's make some priorities kind of thing. And then we convene our community together. So we have our poverty task force, which has like 70 organizations associated with it for information sharing, etc. So that's basically our budget. Last year, okay. Last year, we launched Generation Next because one of the things we recognize is we've got to have the next generation of leaders coming up. And so we've been working with local people associated with Bruce, of course, to learn how not-for-profits and boards and committees and all of those things go. We're heavily involved with Pride. So we had our own Sound Pride Parade and festival was on Saturday. Unfortunately, our staff are all elsewhere to join the Kincardine Parade and all the Kincardine festivities, but we're so thrilled that it's happening locally. One of the more unique projects we've been involved with, because, you know, when you think United Way, you think generally poverty-based issues, but the OPP approached us about 7 years ago around a Safe Communities initiative for the Bruce Peninsula. We also sit on the Safe Communities for South Bruce. We're the fundraiser treasurer. So if they need money, we go find money. But it's a story of data and solving a problem. So we knew we had a stunt driving problem up the peninsula. We leveraged some dollars through some very strange conversations that I don't have time to tell you about today. But we got speed spy devices that belong now to the OPP. We found the money, we gave them to the OPP. They did the data run, checked the data to Aurelia, who said, oh, you have a problem. We said, we know we have a problem. And then we mobilized community resources. So we had 2 community meetings. We had one Wyerton, one Tobermory, and how to engage the community, the fire department, the OPP, everybody in solving this problem. And within 3 years, we've seen an 85% drop in stunt driving. And it's really an example of how we use data to address a problem, engage the community, and get going and solving the problem. So it's one of those little things we're kind of proud of. We of course have our backpack program. I have actually in the car right now. So I'm glad I said I was coming in person and not Zooming because I have 25 backpacks that need to go to Huron Heights School tomorrow. So I'm going to see Mom and she's going to take them because they're getting ready to tuck them away for September. And, you know, it's hard to get a hold of the teachers in the summer. So we're bringing them down now. And we do a lot of backpacks in the area. This was a wish list project from a local paramedic in Grey County, but we expanded it and worked with Ray Lux with Bruce County paramedics. So every ambulance now has a collapsible tea kettle, boils water, it has oatmeal, it has hot chocolate, it's got granola bars. So if they're out in the community, it was designed more for when they're out doing homelessness outreach. But if they happen to be at a fire scene and somebody's, you know, hungry, or you've got somebody who's sitting there watching, you know, their life's work burn, you know, they can make them some hot chocolate, get some sugar into them, get some food into them, and it's on every ambulance. Or if they're, you know, they're out on a mental health call and somebody's just really hangry. So we were able to work with NPX on this project and put a bin in every ambulance in Bruce and Grey. So as I said earlier, our utility assistance program is our largest program in terms of financial investment. And energy poverty is the intersection of the cost of energy, the type of housing, and the income of the household associated with it. And so there are a lot of supports and a lot of programs out there. So one of the programs we have is the OESP. We did 94 applications last year, which is a $50,000 value to those applicants as a rebate on their electricity. So just to run through these numbers real quick, and I know you've read them all and may have questions. And it's really interesting from a climate change perspective because we have this data for 15 years. So we can see the switch from furnace oil to propane, and to go from propane to natural gas is $100 regulator for your furnace. So we have seen that shift over time. And we share a lot of our data with climate change people to look at that switch. So we only had 34 households that needed furnace oil, but 68 needing propane assistance. Where we're going crazy is wood. A lot of people are putting in cordwood, wood burning stoves. We end up generally by March, we can't even source it for cordwood. And one of the great pieces with the connections is when we had, Tornado Tuesday a couple of years ago, and Saugeen Shores had a lot of downed trees. They were able to take them to Saugeen First Nation, who then could turn them into cordwood for their elders program. And we were able to assist with that. Electricity and natural gas have provincial programs because they are monopolies. So we assisted in the applications with 61 for electricity support and 21 with natural gas. We do see folks when they get onto the natural gas, it's a much more manageable bill. And just because I'm here, I threw in the Westerio. So when Westerio provides funding to Bruce County Housing processes applications for support from Westerio Power. But when they run out of dollars, because it's a finite amount of money, they refer people to us and we use our fundraised dollars to assist those folks. So that was 7 families last year. And the reality is that this is an income issue. This is not a, well, just turn the light out when you leave the room. Our people are not wasting energy in any way, shape, or form. We have people that live in their living room through the winter and use blankets to board up the rest of the house, which causes its own problems with mold growth and things like that. But these are the incomes of the people over the years that have been accessing our program. So last time, and we always do a July to June, so winter sticks in the middle of our data. So 23,000 is the average income of the people accessing our program. This is not a budgeting issue. This is not a waste issue. This is strictly an income issue. So I want to take you through 211. So we had some fun with 211 creating movie posters. 211 is an information and referral service. It's a phone number. It is answered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week throughout Ontario. We are working as the United Ways across Canada, rolling it out across Canada. We were able to accelerate our plans because of the pandemic and investments from the federal government. So these are just some of the fun posters we worked to raise awareness of 211. But coming back to that data-driven organization to solve problems, we can take this 211 data, and I just asked it to give me what's going on in Kincardine. And this is just the first 6 months of 2023 of what the needs are. And I'm going to run through these on a more focused. So the top needs identified of why people are calling 211. What is it they're calling for information for, resources for, and of course, housing. And then income supports. And health supports. And health could be everything and anything pandemic related. It could be I'm looking for a primary care. It could be I'm not sure, what's the telehealth number, because you can call 211 just to say what's the number for. So this gives you an idea of why people are calling 211 in the Kincardine area, what issues they're dealing with. And drilling it down further, what are the top 5 needs? Food, health, housing, income supports, and other information services, connections to other resources. Must go faster. So the other thing with 211 is the unmet needs. So what happens? They call in, I'm looking for housing, Jack, get it built. Condos, don't care, build. So unmet needs is when they ask for help or they ask for direction to something and it doesn't exist or we can't do it. There is no shelter, there is no housing, there is no vacancy, all of those things. And you can see, again, housing is that top unmet need. And the reasons, and this is all 211 track data live that you can go on to 211 Ontario and look at any given moment. So they were ineligible for the service. The waiting list was full. The hours of the program don't work with when they're available to go and access it, or there was simply no resource to meet that need. Like there is no homeless shelter in Grey Bruce. The person calling has no transportation to get to that service, or they simply can't afford the service because there is a cost to that service. So when we look at unmet needs and trends over the last couple of years, pandemic through, you can see that housing continues to climb significantly. Information, people are seeking more and more resources to help them get where they need to go. And you can see some of this ebb and flow. 2020, CERB was a great universal basic income pilot project, and people were able to meet their needs. And then it all stopped. And I won't say any more about that because I'm being polite. So these are the trends. So this is what we're seeing for the Kincardine area. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that or any of the other things. The United Way is up to 10, 9, 8.
Drag it out. You've got 4 more seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dobbin. Are there any questions from council? Any comments? Councillor Kennedy, please.
Excuse me. I get to sit on a committee with this lady, and she has that same passion with her safe communities and the things that she's doing. And I really believe there's some things on that list that we can help out with a small amount of money to help this group out. And I'm hoping at budget time we'll remember that, because I have a feeling we'll talk about that in our next meeting in September.
All right.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we do appreciate the work of the United Way. It's a service that multiple counties, multiple jurisdictions and municipalities assist with and call on for help. So thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, moving on to reports 7.1 Birchwood file review. And I'd like to ask our CAO to present the letter from Gregory Stewart from Donnelly Murphy Lawyers. Jillian, please.
Thank you, Mayor Craig. We do have Greg Stewart with us here tonight virtually, so he can speak to the letter overall, but I thought it would be important for me to just note the reason why I requested this. This is a somewhat perhaps simple request that became more complicated over time as an issue. So I thought it was worthwhile to get an independent third party to take a look at the decisions that have been made, the directions that have been given by council, and some of the legal aspects of boundary disputes as well. And I thought it was important for Mr. Stewart from Donnelly and Murphy to be here tonight in the event that council members have any questions. I know that there's certainly some decisions that have been made with respect to the walkway. That's not particularly, the access walkway, not necessarily what this letter was about. But members of the public are also very interested in direction with respect to the trail and the boundary issue that has been resolved and the outstanding one. So I would invite, if through you, Mayor, Mr. Stewart to walk through the letter and his review and findings.
Mr. Stewart, welcome to our meeting tonight. Thank you for the work you've done for us so far. And as our CAO has commented, if you would forward us a Cole's notes on the findings you brought forward this evening.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mayor and members of council. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we're good.
Good. I was asked to review the situation, and as the CAO just said, in looking at it and coming into it with fresh eyes, because I had no familiarity with the situation before I was asked to look at it. It is a process that started as a simple request and grew both in the nature of what was involved and in the time it took on the decision process. So there was quite a bit of analysis to be able to see exactly what had happened when and where you were. It really comes down to 3 issues. There was a request from the owners of lot 43 for access to their property through a municipal access in some fashion. And then there were the concerns of owners of lots 41 and 42 concerning the boundary to their property adjacent to the shore road allowance. And then there's the question of the establishment of the Birchwood trails. And each one of these, somewhat rightly or wrongly, have had an impact on the other. The Lot 43 situation, although it took some time, appears to be the most straightforward. And that was that the owners of Lot 43 had historically had an access to their property over other properties. And in cottage areas, particularly older cottage areas along the lake, that's not an unusual situation. The problem is that very often when those things occurred, they occurred informally. So although they've been doing it over time, there's no written agreement, there's nothing registered, and through some process of falling out or whatever, that access was removed. And so the owners of that property approached the municipality to ask for access to their property from the south end of Birchwood Avenue at the subdivision, so that they could accommodate the request. Council looked at what is called Block B in Plan 828 and decided to divide it into two, to take one part of it to establish it as a municipal road allowance to allow the access. And I think the other part is being used for beach access or something of that nature. And based on that and based on negotiation, they completed a survey and established where that division should be and how that municipal road allowance should be established. It was during that period that initially the question of the boundaries of the shore road allowance started to come up. And because there were differing surveys historically, which I'll comment on in a minute, showing the boundary line between the shore road allowance being the public property and the abutting perimeters of the private lands. In the case of Lot 43, the municipality was able to work out a compromise boundary. It was accepted by the owners of Lot 43, and subsequently there were two registered plans deposited. One was setting out the new boundary of Lot 43 at the shore road allowance, and the other one was splitting Block B to accommodate the access situation. So that issue has been finalized and settled, as I understand it. The work hasn't all been completed, but there's been agreement between the municipality and the party on what the perimeter should be, what the survey boundaries should be, and those have been registered and established. There's very little room for anyone else to come into that situation and attempt to disrupt it. If they wanted to, they'd have to go to a court or to a boundary application, but they would have to show, any other property owner would have to show that what you've done with Lot 43 has an adverse impact on them or their property, and there doesn't seem to be any evidence of that. Now, the second issue had to do with the boundary line with Lot 42 and 41. And there were discussions with them afterwards to attempt to find some agreement on the boundary adjustment to have Lot 41 and 42 accept a boundary between their lots and the shore road allowance that was basically outlined in the registered plan that's been deposited. That was deposited in regard to Lot 43. I understand that you haven't been able to find an agreement on that. And in order to resolve the issue, based on legal advice and a review by your lawyer, the boundary on June 13th, the council directed that a Boundary Act application with the Director of Land Titles be initiated. And that's where that sits at this time. The application is with your solicitor and is being prepared. That is a process that it's not quite like a land tribunal. The director sits as a decision maker and has a variety of tools available to try to resolve it. The application, they will very often try to negotiate it or get the parties to come to some understanding. But if they don't, they then have a hearing. Then the director makes a decision and decides what the boundary will be. The third area is that council directed staff in the midst of all this to explore the conversion of an existing open stormwater outlet easement between properties 197 and 201 Birchwood to a closed pipe that would permit a trail access to an existing trail network. That was later repealed, that direction. Council also directed staff to work with various stakeholders to create a footpath from 201 Birchwood to Parkwood. And council directed staff to create a footpath across the bluff to 201 to 217 Birchwood. And council has subsequently directed staff to hold off on completing the work on lot 43 for the time being until some of these things can be further pursued. But the work on lot 43 will be completed prior to, it's not waiting necessarily for the Boundary Act situation. So what you have currently is this. The issues with respect to lot 43, there's an agreement been made. It's being implemented, creating a road access to lot 43 and setting the public-private boundary related to lot 43. The issue concerning the boundary to lot 41 and 42 and the implementation of the Birchwood Trail is currently on hold while the boundary application is heard or determined, which will then establish legally what the boundary is between those private properties and the shore road allowance. Part of what you're running into is that boundaries for shore road allowances have always been difficult because they were established years ago, and a lot of the historical legal descriptions are imprecise or inaccurate. And so you wind up with differing views as to what the situation is. You might historically have the municipality, having done a shore road allowance, established that and indicated where the boundary is, and then have surveyors for property owners survey their lands and establish a boundary with a shore road allowance that's different. And that looks like what may have happened in your case, because there were basically, as I understand it, there were two different surveyors who had two different versions showing the boundary in two different places. And what happened in the case of lot 43, there was a compromise boundary agreed to, and it was registered as the boundary between the two. That's what you've attempted to do with lots 41 and 42, but have been unable to do so. The process for establishing those boundaries, basically there are three ways of doing it. One is by negotiation, as you did with lot 43. The municipality and the parties come to some agreement. Okay, let's agree this is where the line is and register it and forget about the historical lines. You can go through a Boundary Act application, as I indicated earlier, or you can go to the Superior Court of Justice and ask them to make an order establishing the boundary. So where you are here, you have lot 43 seems to be, other than finalizing the implementation, wrapped up. Lot 41 and 42 are still up in the air until the Boundary Act application is completed, and that is sort of holding up the completion of your trail determination, because that boundary may become a factor when you establish the trail. So that, having gone through all of that material, that's basically what it appears to come down to. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that information, Mr. Stewart. We appreciate it. Are there any Comments, questions from Mr. Stewart to clarify what we've heard, or like from my goals notes, once again, 43 is done. The negotiations took place. Maybe not everybody liked it, but they're registered. That's done. Lots 41 and 42 were in abeyance until we decide, do we have to, it's at the with the solicitor at this point, and when that process is done, then it'll be done. But it's in the works now. So are there any other questions that you would like clarified? Councillor Blackwell, you begin, please.
Thank you. Through you. One of the questions I have is, while lot 41 and lot 42 are disputed, what happens kind of with the trail that's there right now? Like if it's under dispute, should no one be on it? Or is it something that if we believe that it's ours, we can allow individuals on it?
Good question. There is that established trail, like we were down walking on it, but from your perspective, Mr. Stewart, is the trail that's been established over time there accessible to the public for use until the solicitor informs us of the result of that negotiation? What's your perspective on that, please?
Well, from my understanding of it, and then there was a lot of information regarding this and it took a while to kind of figure it out. Hopefully I got a clear picture, but if the trail is there and if it's owned by the municipality and if it's safe, then you should be able to allow the public to use it. My understanding is there may be some disagreement as to where one of the boundaries of the trail is. So you may have some issue of somebody saying, people say if it's the eastern boundary and they're walking along there, saying they're walking on their property. But my understanding is the bulk of it is established as municipal property, and you should be able to use that, assuming it's safe.
Good answer. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'd had two questions. The first is about lot 43. I thank you for that. Most of us beforehand would assume it was essentially a done deal. I think about the stakeholders for this letter and who it might be intended audience. One would be in council, the other would be the public. One thing I would think would have been useful in the lot 43 area would be a professional opinion had that boundary dispute gone into either a Boundary Act application or into the courts, whether there would have been likely a different outcome than the compromise that was achieved by the two parties. I think that would be useful. For instance, if somebody were to say, you could have gone both ways, but in all likelihood, some precedents that have been set or past experience would have been the courts, if we used that, might have looked at it and said, you split the difference. Can you tell me a reason why we wouldn't split the difference? So that's one. I'd be interested to hear your comments on that.
Yep. Can we deal with that question first then? Yep. So you got the gist of that question?
Yeah, yes, I did, through you, Mr. Mayor. The situation in lot 43 is one of the three options I talked about, and it was negotiated. What a court would do is hard. It's hard to be absolutely certain. I mean, if you go into a court application or even a Boundary Act application, there likely will be evidence offered as to if there are two different boundaries in two different surveys, what the historical basis of those are. And if in looking at that, a court were able to decipher a clear picture as to what it was, then they will likely order that's what it was. And that this involves, I was just involved in a case where it goes through historical documents, surveyors' notes. Surveyors have to keep very detailed notes on everything they do. And very often you can piece together what they did through those historical notes. And these may be from the 1850s or the 1830s and handwritten, and sometimes they're vague. But if a court can be persuaded that historically this is accurate and this is where it is, well, then the court will make that order. If they can't, then they may well go to a compromise on the basis that I mean, they would have to be persuaded that the compromise is the appropriate approach. The broader interest in Lot 43, however, is regardless of what the rest of it is, that is a negotiation between the owners of Lot 43 and the municipality. And the municipality certainly has the authority to make a decision. You can't just make it out of thin air, but make a decision. And the people on Lot 43 are at liberty to make whatever agreement they want, as long as it affects only their land. So you could possibly end up with two different boundary lines. There's maybe not a lot of logic to it, but that's generally how it would be determined.
Second question.
Thank you. The second question, and I don't expect you might have known this, it's related to the third establishment of the Birchwood Trails. Well, one of you could comment from a professional opinion or experience, what about the rights of the public to access and use, say, a road allowance outside of, say, a trail that has been specifically established for their use? Because that is one of the outstanding issues that, and if for instance, it could be legally said, yes, technically you have access to all the parts of the road allowance. However, in a case where a public government has established a trail for your use, that does impose some limits on you being able to run wild outside of that specifically designed trail. If I wanted to hit a home run.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. If it's public land and it's a public roadway, you indicated, the municipality has the authority under the Municipal Act to limit access to a road, either temporarily or permanently. So they can do whatever they want with it, really. I mean, there may be political consequences to it, but legally, they can do whatever they want. The whole issue of people being able to go on there and run amok, they don't have the authority to do that. In other words, it's a municipal road. They don't have the authority to put barricades up on it. The public doesn't have the authority, say, because they don't want anybody going through there to bring a truckload of gravel and dump it on, or dig holes, or those types of things. It's a municipal road, and the municipality has control and responsibility for that road and can monitor and control what is done on it.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this report. Through the chair, I really appreciate the fact that we went independent for this legal review of the situation, so that everyone could see that we're working with a common set of facts and understanding. I think that's really important. And I also appreciate from your findings and the highlighting from Councillor Hinsberger that just because land is municipal property does not make it acceptable for random members of the public to blaze their own trails sort of wherever they please. And it's going to be our hardworking municipal staff that at the end of the day is going to be installing the trails and signs. And to that end, if it's acceptable, after seeing all this, I'd like to sort of go with the evidence presented in this report and propose a motion to my fellow councillors that we reverse our previous instructions to staff to stop work and request that staff be allowed to resume and complete their work as intended.
Motion proposed by Councillor Kavanaugh. Pardon me. Is there anyone who would like to second that motion? Councillor Kennedy. So you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you. Sorry, just to clarify, because that's a pretty broad motion. This is specifically in relation to the establishment of the trail on the municipal portion of lot 43 or abutting lot 43.
Councillor Kavanaugh, just to confirm, please.
Just to confirm, that is correct. We're still awaiting from response from the solicitor regarding lots 42 and 41, but what was determined for 43 should be completed.
During our tour, the trail was identified. It was still ragged, rustic. Mulchy. That's a good word. Is that a word? Okay. But certainly no, for the benefit of the residents down there to clearly identify and sign and protect municipal property and protect the people walking on it. Your motion seems appropriate at this time. Is there any other discussion about that? Deputy Mayor, please.
A couple of questions. One perhaps can be answered by the CAO. What work is left? I thought it had been completed.
Through you, Mayor, we do have the Director of Infrastructure online, and he may be able to jump in just to say what was left to be completed, but to my knowledge, it's a clear delineation and more just establishment through the creation of some placement of logs, putting the rest of the mulch around. I think the tree issue of what had been trimmed was all completed. Also removal of other barriers that are impeding that. So Mr. Weiser, if you want to jump in, feel free.
Thanks, Jill, and through you, Mayor Craig. So that is accurate. We would finish up the mulch. There is some cedars that do need to be planted down there based on the time of the year and summer temperatures. We would look to do that in the fall. We had some signage that we had placed there previously that has been removed, so we would look to put that up here now too. But I mean, fairly minor in nature and cosmetic aspects. And then Jill did mention there are two barriers further south that we would remove as well, or at least relocate back onto private property.
Another question, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. My question is to Mr. Stewart. Thank you very much for the report. It's very helpful. And as we're contemplating this motion, particularly with regards to the lands abutting lot 43, would it be fair to say, effectively, I think you've stated that it's a done deal in terms of the agreement that has taken place. And would it be fair to say for any residents that are perhaps of the view that this can be challenged, that it's an extremely high standard for them, a third party, to show standing to challenge this?
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, yes. I mean, that showing standing is anybody can bring an application for anything they want, I suppose. But to be successful, where there is an agreement between two parties, which there is here, who have both of whom have legal right to enter into the agreement, it's not likely someone is going to be successful getting it set aside. Certainly the people that own lot 43 are legally within their rights to establish that boundary and agree to establish that boundary wherever they want. If the other party on the other side of the boundary is in agreement with it, and the municipality certainly has jurisdiction over the land on the other side, the road allowance, and can enter into that agreement. So, I mean, they can get standing in the context, they could bring a court application, but I mean, bringing the court application is just the beginning of it. They'd have to present a viable case, and the only likely way that they would have any success would be able to show that this is that decision is detrimentally going to impact their property, which it won't. They're further down the line. It doesn't even affect their line.
Another? Okay. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Yes, thank you through you, Mayor. I think one of the intended outcomes of this letter is that it forms a record that will stand on its own and outlive the need for any supplementary information. So I guess my ask, or I'm wondering about the usefulness of maybe a revision to the letter based on the discussion that's heard tonight, to tend to incorporate or solidify some of the comments and statements that have been made, because I think they're valuable and they should all be, it should be as self-contained as possible, is my opinion.
Might I ask what sort of information you're talking about? A supplementary letter from Mr. Stewart, or what? An addendum?
Thank you, through your mayor. Like just a revision to it, to incorporate some statements related to the other issues like Deputy Mayor Clark raised, the one that I did about as far as the public sort of, because it, thanks.
Certainly, if that's a desire by council to include, this is a recorded meeting, so we can go back and I can speak with Mr. Stewart to see if there can be some minor amendments to make sure this is encapsulated in one document.
Deputy Mayor?
I think it's a fair point. I think effectively it would be perhaps prudent to have sort of written advice saying that any challenge to the Lot 43 dispute is likely to be unsuccessful.
Thank you, through your mayor. That's correct. And if I could almost put verbatim the words that Mr. Stewart said related to public access to the road allowance outside of the trail that's been provided, I think that's really useful too.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I just had a quick question around the various options in terms of settling a boundary dispute. And I'm wondering whether you could, I'm sure there's not like a specific dollar figure, but in terms of the various options, I would expect some would be much more expensive than others to challenge, so it would be less expensive to negotiate compared to go through a Boundary Act application. I'm just wondering if there's any details around that.
Can I ask the purpose for the question?
I'm just
Is
wondering.
that for our use? Like we've established a pathway that we're following. Is this for public information that you're asking this question, or?
Well, just in the sense of like why you would negotiate first versus going to a boundary. Like we attempted to negotiate with 41 and 42, and then when we couldn't, we went to a Boundary Act. Do we negotiate first because it's the more efficient and
Through you, Mayor. So while I was not here, I would absolutely assume, even though you shouldn't assume, that your first step would be to try to negotiate where it's just determined that there is a dispute. You would start with negotiations to see if you can come to a resolution, because that generally will be of a lesser cost than proceeding through some other type of proceeding, which requires additional professionals to, work on your behalf. And court proceeding, I would also expect would be more expensive option. But again, I do see Mr. Weiser has jumped on. So because he was here as part of the process, he can probably speak to the specifics with lot 41 and 42.
Director Weiser, please.
Thanks, and through you, Mayor Craig. So with respect to the two applications, certainly and I mean, even broader than the subject matter or those specific sites. I mean, the first attempt is to try and work with people. We want to be an open, friendly, transparent municipality, in my opinion. And part of that's trying to find a resolution to conflict or issues that might be workable between all stakeholders. So that was the approach with lot 43, recommended to council to undertake that. And that was on the basis that the adjacent landowner was also open to that. With lot 41 and 42, we certainly made that same attempt. However, the property owner there, the adjacent landowner, felt differently in terms of where the boundary lines were and wasn't open to such negotiations. So just taking a look at kind of the chronological list of options, we try to start with something that's the least expensive to the taxpayer, and then work our way through that list to the hierarchy of things to gain resolution.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the clerk to repeat the motion, and then we'll call the question on that. Clerk, please.
Okay. That council direct staff to complete any outstanding work on the lot 43 portion of the Birchwood Trail paused by resolution 05-15-2305.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? And that is carried. All right, we have thank you very much for your input this evening, Mr. Stewart. You've brought some clarity to the issue, and our CAO will be in contact to resolve this issue. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening.
All right, we have a report from our Director of Recreation Services, Community Services. Clerk, we have a motion in regards to that, please.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger. Seconded by Doug Kennedy, that council approve the facility booking nonprofit policy and that the approved fees and charges bylaw number 2022-162 be amended to include nonprofit group rates of 60% of the approved rental rate, and further that changes take effect on September 1st, 2023.
Director, would you like to address this, or would you just like to field any questions that come your way?
Maybe I'll just take a minute just to speak to it briefly, if that's all right. So the report, I think, has covered a majority of what we wanted to share with council this evening. It is with specific rooms, and that is not a change to the previous policy that we inherited. So I wanted to be sure that council was aware of that. I can also share with you the existing cost for a permit, for a 1 hour permit for those rooms is $16.48. So that's just some additional information that wasn't included in the report. As the report did indicate, the last 12 months, we have had 279 free bookings within those facilities. And in some cases, some of those groups are using the facilities up to 3 times a week. And certainly it leaves us in a position where we have to turn away bookings that are paying full price for it. So really, this evening, we just wanted to present to you a proposed new policy, and we'd like to council to consider that it starts on September the 1st to allow us an opportunity to reach out to the groups who have currently booked through the facilities.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions from council members? Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. Thank you for the report. I was just wondering, I'm sure that you've given some thought, but do you think September 1st is sufficient time for some of these organizations that may have broken up for the summer?
So we gave some thought to that and thought that it was sufficient time. Now we can appreciate the fact that it may be a challenge for groups that you are correct that maybe don't meet during the course of the summer. We're happy to take the lead from council. If you would prefer a longer duration, then we certainly can work with that as well.
Also, I noted that one of the issues were that some of these organizations have repeated bookings that you were saying were during times that you're having to turn away sort of, I guess, paid organizations that are paying for it. Is there any peak times? Like, is there any opportunity to offer some of these organizations perhaps those times that are not being used or peak times? I don't know whether or not there's data to support when those rooms are booked more frequently or not.
It really depends on the demographics of who's booking the facility. So as we know, our older adults are typically booking facilities in the morning if they are booking for a program or for a rental. In the evenings, it's always our prime time though. Every facility, every room for the most part is booked in the evenings at in that facility. And I'm referring to the Davidson Center as a key facility. And in some cases, our not-for-profit groups will book for the entire year so that they've got those rooms available for their programs. They are their own programs because they have a reoccurring time each month or each week that the group is coming. So that's why they would book ahead of time. And that's why at that point, it doesn't make sense for a full paying group to bump those groups. We also do recognize that there are other facilities within the municipality that can possibly accommodate some of the usages for the not-for-profit groups as well.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. Just the first question, precedents around the area, how other municipalities, if Jane had an answer for that, how they work with nonprofits and what kind of a line they draw between different groups and number of times used. Do you have any data, or did I miss it?
Through you, I can give you the data that I remember we collected throughout this process. I don't have all of it in front of me, but obviously when we approach policies like this, we do investigating and we reach out to other communities within the region. The experience that I've encountered to date is that very few communities offer facilities free. One municipality offered a facility free, but then asked for a $20 donation, which is actually more than what we are charging for our hourly rate. Only one other municipality that responded does provide free usage for AA, whereas all other municipalities charge for them. So that was a little bit of the feedback that I've received based on my contacts.
Second question, Councillor Kennedy.
Yep, through the chair. Just, you know, my concern with this is I've got just a few concerns. Just first of all, you know, our fees went up substantially in some areas, a little bit in others, which we needed to do. And I understand that because we were not to levels that other municipalities were charging. You know, we've stopped the committee structure for a while and it'll get re-going again here a little bit. So those are volunteers, affected a lot of volunteers around town. And now we're going to tell volunteers that they're going to pay for a facility that they've never paid for in 2 or 3 months. I'm not saying that I won't say yes at some time going forward, but tonight I couldn't say yes to this just because I don't feel that September 1st is an acceptable date. January 1st, after maybe we're, you know, getting a little bit of feedback from organization, possibly, but those are my thoughts.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. One of the things I love about this agenda item tonight is that it's on committee of the whole, but per the report, it's not actually being asked to be considered by council until the 5th of July. So this is a good example of what we can use committee of the whole for, because I've already heard a number of comments that I hadn't considered prior to actually coming here tonight. A couple things for me is like, I'm not sure I want saving money or making more money to be the driver on this. One thing I hadn't considered, and I don't have a great appreciation for it, is that I'm starting to hear some in cases where a number of these groups have used the facility because they can, and it has been free of charge, but in many cases, or at least some, they have alternatives to host theirs, which would also be of no cost to them either. So I thought I knew where I was going to go when I first showed up tonight. Now I need to think about it, which is why I like the fact that we won't be asked to consider this as a council until the 5th of July.
Deputy Mayor, you had a question?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I was just wondering whether there was, I know that you're flexible on the commencement date, but was September 1st chosen for any reason? Because it doesn't affect this year's budget, so.
Really, that's when a lot of the groups start back is in September. Also, council did task staff with finding $25,000 in revenue, and this would certainly be contributing towards that dollar amount as well.
There are 2 New Year's every year. One is January 1st and one is September 1st. That's programs run September to May, and then they got a new year, September 1st. Councillor Stanoff-Gray, did you have your hand up? Oh, Councillor Kennedy. Okay.
Oh, no, just I was going to comment about, you know, the money that I understand where this is coming from and I respect that. I'm just not sure if, you know, about the date. So thanks.
Councillor Hinchberger. Okay, so so there's a motion that council approve the facility booking policy and that the changes take effect September 1st, 2023. This is a recommendation to bring it to council. This isn't implementing the policy. This is a recommendation to bring it to council, at which point we can carry it, defeat it, table it, defer it, set it for a different date, whatever council would like to do. So the 2 questions: is policy a good policy? But then the next question is, when do we implement it and those sorts of things? So I ask for your concurrence of the motion. All in favor of bringing this recommendation forward to council? And anyone opposed? And that's carried. Kincardine Lawn Bowling Club User Agreement, Recreation and Community Programs. And our manager, Karen, are you gonna deal with this one?
Yes, I am. So through the chair, staff have worked with the Kincardine Lawn Bowling Club to enter into a user agreement.
sorry.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
gonna interrupt. It was my mistake.
Oh.
We have a motion so that we know what we're talking about.
This is moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Rory Kavanagh, that committee of the whole recommend that council enter into a 5-year agreement with the Kincardine Lawn Bowling Club for the use of the Kincardine Lawn Bowling Greens located at 216 Lambton Street, Municipality of Kincardine.
Karen,
Thank you. Through the chair, staff have worked with the Kincardine Lawn Bowling Club to enter into a user agreement with them for use of the lawn bowling greens at McPherson Park located on Lambton Street. The proposed 5-year agreement is consistent with all other user agreements currently in place with regards to roles and responsibilities of the club and the municipality, the insurance requirements, termination notice period, etc. It should be noted that the Lawn Bowling Club is supportive of this proposed agreement.
any questions or comments from council? Councillor Hinchberger?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I only say this for those who might be watching and care not to review the package. The draft agreement does also contain the standard 1-year termination clause on the part of the municipality. So we're not tied necessarily to 5 years just by virtue of this agreement. Thanks.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray?
Through you, Chair. I have no concerns with this agreement, but I was curious if it is going to be part of the parks plan, just because of some of the layouts down there that have been suggested by other groups.
Yes, certainly through you, Chair. That does fall into a worthy component of being part of the parks plan, and we are just in the process of approving a preferred consultant too.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you, through you. When I'm looking at the attached drawing of where the agreement covers, it doesn't cover the horseshoe pits. Is that correct?
That is correct. It only covers the lawn bowling greens.
Councillor? Okay, we have a recommendation that the council enter into a 5-year agreement. All in favor of this recommendation, and that's carried. Okay, other areas of responsibility: support to downtown Kincardine businesses impacted by vandalism through strategic initiatives. Clerk, please.
Moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by Mike Hinchberger, that the committee of the whole recommend that council direct staff to provide $5,500 in funding to Bruce County through the Spruce to Bruce program in order to provide support to downtown Kincardine businesses impacted by vandalism to storefront windows.
All right, we have in our audience Jeff Loney, who's our Economic Development Director at the County of Bruce. I'm gonna wander off a bit here. Wonder if you have any comments that add to our decision making tonight, Mr. Loney?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the rest of committee. When we heard of what happened in downtown Kincardine, our economic development team started to put out some ideas around the different things that we could do to support businesses, given the multitude of things going on in downtown Kincardine right now. Through that, we realized our Spruce to Bruce program would be a perfect vehicle to be able to provide financial incentives to some of these businesses, acknowledging that there's other pieces in place. We put that number around $500. Bruce County will be pulling $5,500 from our Spruce to Bruce reserve that County Council put in place last year for situations just like this. So the money actually utilized for this project will not impact the ever-growing wait list for additional funds within the program. So we're excited to be able to reach out to those businesses tomorrow with that involvement and working with your strategic initiatives and economic development team to see if there was involvement financially that Kincardine was interested in participating in. So I'm here to answer questions.
And we, of course, we thank our manager of strategic initiatives, Lori Fiozzi, for working in cooperation with our county. Any questions from council regarding this proposal? All in favor? Carried. Good work, Mr. Loney. Carried the day and yeah, hard sell indeed. All right, so we have the mayor's update at this point, and it seems that this week coming is the week of group meetings. So there's a Bruce Power midterm update, South Bruce Gray Health Center update, community living presentation, a seniors forum, Isotopes for Hope, and Board of Health meeting that I get to like a variety, but it's a whole bunch of groups that are all working independently but together at the same time, trying to make this place a better place too. So if you have any questions about any of them, of course, I'm always open for comment if you're so inclined. All right, now we address the consent agenda. Of course, these are routine and are enacted in one motion as a matter arising from business arising when we get back into council, unless any council member has an item that they would like to ask a question or confirm or comment on at this time. So are there any comments or questions or items that you'd like to pull from the consent agenda? Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. One of the ones I found interesting, there was some cuts that we made during budget, just based on the constraints that we were under. And there was one letter in there with different people offering to offer a volunteer capacity with the Reuse It Center. I was just curious with our new volunteer program if we might be able to afford some opportunities with the amenities we had to close with volunteer outreach.
Through the mayor, so maybe if I'm, just to be clear, the Reuse It Center, the building at the landfill has already been repurposed pretty quickly after the decision from council for storage of equipment associated with landfill operations. So there probably are other opportunities to consider, particularly working with other types of groups that do try to find homes for gently used items from your household. So I have had some conversations with others in the community about what that might look like here, but I don't think it would be exactly the Reuse It Center, but we can discuss.
Anything else? Okay, Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you. I was just going to mention very quickly, there was a letter from about the Hawks Nest participation, and there were 3 local businesses from the Kincardine area that were recognized in that competition, which is I think pretty exciting. So it was Stellara, Griffin's, Sweet Sensation, and Dildos from our area all did pretty well at that competition.
Nancy and I had an opportunity to attend, and certainly the representatives from our area did themselves and us very proud. They were exceptional presentations. All right, clerk, motion to adjourn.
So this is moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by, sorry, wrong page. Sorry, moved by Beth Blackwell, seconded by Doug Kennedy, that this committee of the whole adjourn at 6:32 p.m.
All in favor? That's carried. So we're now back into our council meeting. And we're at 10.1. Clerk, please, we have a motion for that.
Moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Rory Kavanagh, that council approve the recommendations contained in the consent agenda dated June 19th, 2023, and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions.
You heard the motion. All in favor? That's carried. Kincardine Lawn Bowling Club Agreement Bylaw.
Moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by Mike Hinchberger, that the Kincardine Lawn Bowling Club Agreement Bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as Bylaw 2023 Run 07.
So you've heard the motion. All in favor? That's carried. Support to downtown Kincardine businesses impacted by vandalism.
Moved by Beth Blackwell, seconded by Doug Kennedy, that council direct staff to provide $5,500 in funding to Bruce County through the Spruce the Bruce program in order to provide support to downtown Kincardine businesses impacted by vandalism to storefront windows.
Heard the motion, all in favor? And that's carried. We do have a motion presented by Councillor Kavanaugh. Clerk, please.
So in council, this will be moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Rory Kavanaugh, that council direct staff to complete any outstanding work on lot 43 of the Birchwood Trail.
Heard the motion, all in favor? That's carried. All right, general announcements. Who'd like to start? How about me? Because I know it's going to get ripped out from under my paper here. So we're pretty blessed in our community because of all the hockey teams that win silver sticks. But we have a community member who has won a gold stick. This award is presented as an award of merit by the Ontario Hockey Association for outstanding service towards the hockey teams in Ontario, but you cannot be a hockey player. You have to be in management or administration. And one of the criteria is that this person must have spent at least 10 years of continuous service to receive that. Well, our winner, Doug Kennedy, could have won 5 of them because it's my understanding that he's been as involved in this for 50 years. So if I might echo your comment, a big shout out to Councillor Doug Kennedy for winning the gold stick for hockey service. Okay, there we go. Councillor Blackwell, your turn.
Thank you. I mentioned before the meeting, but when I was talking to Mr. Kennedy about Councillor Kennedy about getting ready for lots of Rock with Your Docs, he said, I can't be there because I'm getting an award and they wouldn't move the time. So it really shows how committed he is to helping out in our community. I just want to remind everyone that this weekend is our Pride Parade. I am really looking forward to walking in the parade. I've got my bubble gun already, and that there will be some really fun activities down at the park afterwards. So I hope you all come out for that.
Councillor Inchberger.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Showing my hearings going, I thought you said you were bringing your bubble gum, not your bubble gun. I also look forward to walking with you this Saturday or riding in, I don't know how big an MOK truck is, but see you there.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, just about Saturday, you know, the participation around this table, staff, counselors selling tickets, buying tickets, volunteering, you know, it was an amazing night. We made a lot of money, don't know how much for the hospital. So thank you very much for everybody. Thanks.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray.
I too am planning on attending Pride and I can't wait to see what you guys are up to in that parade.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, we have Pride coming up, but since we're not back in before the next time, I'd also like to point out that July 1st will be Canada Day, and we're celebrating early in the morning with the Lions breakfast at 8 a.m. in Tiverton. So I hope everyone gets up early and comes out there and then joins in the parade there, and then the parade down in Kincardine as well. So it's another full day of fun activities this summer.
Deputy Mayor Clark.
No announcements.
Ooh, that was nasty. That was good. All right, let me think, where are we at here? Anything from you, Jillian?
Couple things, if you don't mind. Thank you. I sent out a message to council, but just for the public interest as well, we're live with the cloud permitting system. So folks can go on to our website and access cloud permit if they have building applications they want to put forward. They can still come to the office. Paper is still an option. Then if people need help, we certainly are able to help them. Another note, memberships for the health club and swimming are currently being sold as monthly memberships. So if you've got some folks that are home for the summer, they can purchase them on a month-to-month basis if they're interested. And summer swim lesson registration opens on Tuesday, June the 20th at 7 a.m. online on our website.
Clerk, please.
Moved by Beth Blackwell, seconded by Doug Kennedy, that council move into closed meeting for the purpose of considering a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on behalf of the municipality or local board. So Bruce Telecom update, and that's pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. And further, that council return to regular open meeting upon completion.
Heard the motion, all in favor? Carried. And there's a 5-minute break until